Orcas, often celebrated for their grace and remarkable intelligence, are now at the center of a chilling series of attacks. Trainers who once worked in sync with these majestic predators have been met with sudden moments of terror as orcas turned on them unpredictably and violently. Meanwhile, boats cutting through once safe waters have become unexpected targets, their rudders torn apart by the powerful jaws of these ocean hunters. Is this a sign of rebellion, or something far more sinister lurking beneath the waves? The ocean hides many secrets, and some are darker than we can imagine. Trainers and orcas perform stunning shows that amaze crowds, but there is a dangerous truth beneath the surface. No matter how well they are trained, orcas are wild predators with instincts that cannot be controlled. This story follows trainers Sam Collins and Jake Donovan as they confront the unpredictable nature of these apex creatures, whose raw power can surface at any moment. After years and years of training, which typically involves orca trainers, investing years building relationships with these intelligent and powerful animals. However, when things go wrong, the results can be catastrophic. The tragic events that unfold reveal the inherent danger in working so closely with creatures that, despite being trained, are still governed by primal instincts. In these moments, we are reminded that the ocean's predators can never be fully tamed. No matter how deep the bond between the trainer and the animal, nature's grip on these animals is 10 times stronger than any bond they can form with man. The day at the marine park started like any other, with the sun reflecting off the clear waters of the Orca tank and an eager audience filling the stands. Families brought their children to witness the spectacle of orcas performing in harmony with their trainers, marveling at the seamless interaction between humans and these magnificent creatures. Sam Collins, the park's most experienced trainer, had been working with orcas for over a decade. For him, this show was just another routine, and his bond with Luna, the park's star orca, was the cornerstone of his confidence. Sam and Luna had spent years developing trust and understanding, creating a flawless partnership that never failed to impress the crowd. Every leap, every splash, and every interaction had been rehearsed and performed hundreds of times before. The connection between them seemed unbreakable, a relationship built on mutual respect. But as Sam stood beside the tank, watching Luna glide effortlessly through the water, something felt off. Luna had been restless lately, showing subtle signs of unease, but Sam hadn't thought too much of it. Orcas, like humans, go through phases. Sometimes they're moody, sometimes they're playful. Sam had seen it all. But still, Luna's recent behavior was unlike her usual calm and controlled self. Sam had always known her to be reliable, responding to his commands with precision. Today, though, that sense of unease gnawed at him. He couldn't pinpoint why, but he had a feeling deep down that something wasn't quite right. Shaking off the creeping doubt, Sam plastered on a smile for the crowd, their cheers washing over him as the show began. The music blared through the speakers, and on cue, Luna launched herself out of the water, performing a breathtaking leap that sent the audience into a frenzy. Sam relaxed slightly, reassured by the familiar sight of Luna's graceful movements. Maybe he'd been overthinking it. The tension he'd felt earlier seemed like a false alarm as the show moved along without a hitch. Children squealed with delight as Luna sprayed water onto the front rows, and Sam smiled, proud of the connection he and Luna shared. This was why he did the job, to give people unforgettable experiences and to foster an appreciation for these majestic creatures. However, as the performance progressed, that nagging feeling returned. Luna, while still impressive to the audience, was not quite herself. Her movements were slightly off. Not enough for the crowd to notice, but Sam could tell. She was straying from the practiced routine, swimming in odd patterns, and her responses to Sam's signals were delayed, sometimes off mark altogether. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like improvisation, but Sam knew their routine inside and out. Luna wasn't following his cues as precisely as she always had. The cheers from the crowd grew louder, the laughter of the children echoing around the stadium. But Sam was growing more concerned with each passing second. He subtly adjusted his signals, trying to guide Luna back into the flow of the performance, but it was clear she wasn't responding the way she should. When it came time for the finale, Sam hesitated. This was the moment everyone waited for. The synchronized swim with Luna, a breathtaking act that closed the show in perfect harmony. Sam and Luna, gliding through the water as one, had become the park's signature moment, a testament to their years of trust. But tonight, something felt off. Luna had been restless, her energy unpredictable, and Sam couldn't shake the gnawing dread that had settled in his gut. As he stood on the edge of the tank preparing to dive, he couldn't help but wonder what Luna might do next. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to stop, but he pushed it aside, trusting in the routine. Taking a deep breath, he dove into the cool water, hoping the familiar rhythm of the act would settle her. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The music played, the crowd roared, eagerly anticipating the breathtaking finale they had come to love. Luna swam beside him, her sleek body cutting through the water with ease. But then, something shifted. Her movements, once smooth and graceful, became sharp and unpredictable. She circled too close, brushing against Sam with a force that was far too aggressive, her massive body almost pushing him aside. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. He reached out, signaling her to back off, trying to regain control. But instead of responding, Luna did the unthinkable. She swam away, ignoring him entirely. The crowd, unaware of the danger, continued to cheer, thinking this was part of the show, a dramatic twist meant to thrill. But Sam knew better. He knew the danger was real. His instincts screamed at him, telling him he was in trouble. Suddenly, Luna turned back, her powerful body moving with a speed and precision that terrified him. Before he could react, she clamped down on his leg, her jaws closing with a force so intense it felt like his bones would shatter. The pain was immediate, searing through him like fire. He wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but the cold water swallowed his voice. Above, the audience remained blissfully unaware, still captivated by the spectacle unfolding before their eyes. Under the surface, Sam was no longer a trainer. He was prey, and the creature he had trusted for years had become his predator. Luna wasn't following the routine anymore. Sam's signals, once all it took to guide her through a flawless performance, were now meaningless. She was no longer the graceful, responsive creature the audience had come to admire. In an instant, she had become a force of nature, untamable and dangerous. Sam, despite his years of experience, realized he was no longer in control. Luna had turned into something more terrifying than he had ever imagined. Before he could react, she grabbed him in her jaws and pulled him into the depths of the tank. Panic surged through Sam as the icy water surrounded him. Luna dragged him deeper, her powerful body thrashing violently. He tried to regain his bearings, but every second the orca pulled him further. The water around them turned a darker shade of red. The blood, his blood, spread through the tank, a silent signal that something had gone terribly wrong. It took a few moments for the crowd to notice, the cheers slowly giving way to gasps of horror. A murmur spread across the audience, and the realization hit like a wave. This wasn't part of the show. Something was terribly wrong. The stadium, which had moments ago been filled with the laughter of children and the applause of delighted spectators, now fell silent. Parents shielded their children's eyes as the trainers on the platform erupted into action. Commands were shouted, ropes were thrown into the water, but it was all too late. Luna was in a frenzy, whipping Sam around like he weighed nothing. The water, once warm and inviting, now felt cold and menacing. Sam's chest tightened as he struggled to breathe. His lungs burned, and the crushing force of Luna's grip only made it harder for him to fight back. Sam tried to think clearly, to remember the drills they had practiced for emergencies like this. But none of those exercises had prepared him for the reality of being caught in the jaws of an orca he had trusted for years. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Luna, the gentle creature he had bonded with, was now a predator, and Sam was her prey. The cold water pressed in from all sides, and with every second, his strength slipped away. He kicked, he fought, but Luna's grip was too strong, too unrelenting. Above the surface, the audience could only watch in helpless horror. The trainers, desperate to save Sam, frantically tried everything they could, but nothing worked. Luna's massive body thrashed through the tank with terrifying force, creating waves that churned the water into a violent storm. Children screamed, parents whispered frantically, but no one could look away. The man who had once commanded the stage with grace and confidence was now at the mercy of the creature he had dedicated his life to. The creature he had loved. Minutes felt like hours. Sam's vision blurred, the water growing darker as his consciousness began to fade. He knew his time was running out. His movements slowed, his body growing heavier with every moment. The cold seeped into his bones, and he could no longer fight. Suddenly, just as it seemed the end had come, Luna released him. Sam's limp body floated toward the surface, carried by the currents in the tank. The rescue divers plunged into the water, reaching for him, but they were too late. By the time they pulled him to safety, the damage was done. Sam was gone. The man who had once been the heart of the show, beloved by audiences and respected by his peers, had been claimed by the very animal he had trusted above all others. The stadium remained eerily silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. Sam Collins, the park's most skilled trainer, had been taken by Luna, the star Orca, now a killer in the eyes of everyone who had seen the gruesome scene. The water, once a symbol of joy and awe, had become the place of Sam's demise. As the news spread, shockwaves rippled through the world. Luna, once the centerpiece of the park's shows, was no longer seen as a majestic performer, but as a dangerous predator, capable of turning on even those who cared for her most. Jake Donovan, fresh out of training, was excited to start his new job at Ocean View Cove. It was his first day working with Echo, the park's most famous orca. Jake had spent months studying orca behavior, preparing for this moment. He had read everything about their complex moods and unpredictable nature. He knew the risks involved, but believed in the strong bond that could be formed between trainers and these magnificent animals. The day began smoothly. Jake entered the tank, and Echo responded to his commands with perfect precision. Each movement was flawless, and Jake felt an overwhelming sense of pride. His training had paid off, and from the platform, the senior trainer watched, clearly impressed. Everything was going according to plan, and Jake couldn't have been more confident. However, as the session continued, Jake noticed something had shifted in Echo's behavior. She began to stray from her usual routine, her movements slightly off. It was subtle, but there was a tension in the air that Jake, being new, didn't fully grasp. Naive to the sudden change, he continued as if everything was fine. But just like in other cases he'd studied, where orcas had turned on their trainers without warning, Echo suddenly launched herself at him. Before Jake could react, Echo grabbed his leg with her powerful cone-shaped teeth and pulled him under the water with a force he hadn't anticipated. Panic flooded through Jake as he felt the breath leave his lungs. The water, once calm and clear, was now churning with his blood. Everything he had trained for, every safety drill he had run, paled in comparison to the sheer terror of this moment. He fought against Echo's grip, but she was far too strong. The orca was in control now, and Jake's body was at the mercy of her incredible power. The pain was intense, shooting through his leg as Echo's teeth dug in deeper. Jake's mind raced, trying to stay focused, but his thoughts were clouded by fear and the realization that he might not survive this. His lungs burned as he struggled to get to the surface, to breathe, but Echo kept pulling him deeper, the water growing darker and colder. Just when Jake thought it was over, Echo suddenly released him. The orca swam away as if nothing had happened, leaving Jake floating in the tank, gasping for air. His vision blurred, but he could see the senior trainer diving in to pull him to safety. The trainers on the platform had sprung into action the moment they saw the attack, but it all felt like a blur to Jake. All he could focus on was the excruciating pain in his leg and the realization of how close he had come to death. Paramedics arrived quickly, and Jake was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. His leg had been badly injured, and the road to recovery would be long and painful. While he had survived, the experience had shaken him to his core. He had known the risks, but nothing could have prepared him for facing the raw, untamed power of an orca firsthand. News of Jake's attack spread quickly, making headlines much like the infamous incident with Sam Collins years earlier. Questions about the safety of orca performances resurfaced, and many debated whether such shows should even continue. For Jake, the experience was more than just a news story. It was a personal turning point. He had come face to face with the harsh reality of working with these animals, beautiful, intelligent, yet unpredictable and dangerous. In time, Jake returned to work at Ocean View Cove, but he did so with a new perspective. He had a deepened respect for the orcas and understood the fragile bond between trainer and animal. Trust could be built, but it was never absolute. That day had taught him a valuable lesson. No matter how much experience or training a person had, these powerful creatures were forces of nature, and the wild within them could never truly be tamed. The open sea can feel eerily calm, with only the creaking of sails and the crashing waves breaking the silence. But in an instant, that calm can be shattered. Strange movements stir beneath the water, shadows of massive animals passing under your boat. Then, without warning, the danger strikes. Your boat is rammed by the ocean's top predators. As you glance around, a pod of orcas circles your vessel. Lately, orca sightings have surged, and with them, a rise in attacks on boats. What follows is a deep dive into some of the most shocking recent orca encounters that will make you never want to be anywhere near the sea forever. A marine research team studying creatures near Gibraltar was attacked by a pod of aggressive orcas. The orcas were relentless in their attack, ramming the boat so hard that equipment began to fall overboard. The researchers also began to lose their balance due to the constant ramming. With no way to steer, they sent out a mayday. By the time the rescue team arrived, the boat had nearly capsized. The team was rescued with no casualties, but the boat suffered significant damage and had to be towed back to shore. In March 2020, near the Strait of Gibraltar, a group of fishermen were frightened when a pod of orcas attacked their boat. Like most people, the fishermen were fascinated by the majestic marine creatures, but their fascination soon turned to fear. The orcas began ramming the boat, each hit more powerful than the last. Eventually, they damaged the propellers and the boat was unable to move. Frightened, the fishermen sent out an SOS signal. With each passing minute, the boat became more filled with water. Thankfully, the Coast Guard arrived not too long after the distress signal was sent. When the Coast Guard arrived, the boat was partially submerged and the force from the ramming had thrown one fisherman overboard. He was lost to the sea. The Coast Guard tried their best, but it was already too late. In Gibraltar, a fishing crew was attacked by orcas. The fishing crew had been attacked by orcas in the past, but this particular attack felt different. It was much more aggressive and fiercer. The orcas went straight for the rudder, ramming it repeatedly and causing the boat to spin uncontrollably. Usually, when the fishermen run into similar situations, they make loud noises or shoot some flares, and the orcas would go running off. However, this tactic didn't work for this pod of orcas. The orcas continuously rammed the boat, and not long after, the boat gave way, and water began to seep into it. As soon as the crew noticed the water, they realized the situation was bigger than they could handle, so they sent out a distress signal. The rescuers arrived shortly after the boat began sinking. Thankfully, no lives were lost, but one of the crew members got injured in the chaos. Some years back, a luxury yacht cruising near the Canary Islands was suddenly attacked by a pod of orcas. What they experienced on this boat cruise became an event that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. What began as a day of luxury quickly turned into a day of terror within seconds. The orcas took them by surprise, surfacing beneath the yacht. The people on the yacht had no idea that a pod of orcas had surrounded them. The orcas introduced themselves with dramatic flair, ramming the yacht multiple times. The passengers clung to the nearest rigid object for dear life. After a while, large amounts of water made their way onto the deck. The captain, realizing the situation was beyond his control, made a distress call. As time passed, the yacht slowly began to sink. A few minutes later, the crew and passengers were rescued. The only casualty was the yacht. A speedboat was being chased down by a pod of orcas. The boat was fast, but the orcas were able to keep up, swimming not too far behind it. The longer the chase went on, the closer the orcas got. Soon, they began to bump into it. The driver, panicked, increased the speed, hoping that would lead him away from the orcas, but the orcas were able to keep up with the boat's new speed, hitting their bodies against it as the chase continued. The force the orcas used was enough to damage the boat. The passengers, scared for their lives, put on life jackets as water began to fill the boat. Thankfully, they had already gotten close to a ship. All but one of the passengers were rescued. The missing passenger drowned in the chaos. A fishing trawler off the coast of Spain was attacked by a pod of aggressive orcas while on a fishing adventure. The crew noticed the orcas and hoped they wouldn't come their way, but that never happened. The orcas launched an all-out attack on the fishing trawler, ramming into its hull violently. The crew realized that the orcas were out for blood, so they decided to fight back using every single thing at their disposal, from sticks to fishing rods, in an attempt to scare the orcas away. Soon, the boat started leaking, with water seeping into it. The crew realized they were fighting a lost battle against the orcas, so they sent out a distress call. The boat was now partially submerged with 2 crew members clinging to debris. Unfortunately, 1 crew member was nowhere to be found. Soon, the rescuers came to save the 2 survivors and began a search for the last crew member, but they were too late. He was already lost to the sea. A sailor was sailing in Spain when he noticed the orcas circling his boat. He shot flares at them in a bid to scare them off, but it was to no avail. The orcas began ramming the boat's rudder, and the boat began to fill with water rapidly. The smart sailor quickly put on a life jacket, took his radio, and contacted the nearest Coast Guard. However, before the rescue boat arrived, disaster had struck. Debris was found, but the body was nowhere to be found. A family went on a sailing trip near the Strait of Gibraltar, and they noticed a pod of orcas not too far ahead. The children, intrigued, pointed at the majestic marine animals in excitement. Soon, this sighting went from a beautiful encounter to a life-threatening event. The orcas suddenly began attacking the sailboat, and the boat shook violently as the orcas continued to ram the rudder. The family was able to send out a distress call, but not long after, their boat capsized, throwing all family members into the water. The family tried their best to hold on to pieces of their boat's debris, but the current was not in their favor. Only 1 child survived the tragedy. She was just extremely lucky. The rest of her family was tragically lost to the ocean current. A luxury yacht near the Azores was ambushed by a pod of orcas. The orcas approached the yacht and got right down to business. They began ramming it multiple times. After a while, the rudder was damaged and the boat lost control, with water flooding the lower decks. This sent passengers into a panic. Scared, the captain sent out a distress call. Before help arrived, the yacht had already sustained a hole, causing it to begin sinking. Thankfully, all the passengers were rescued, but the yacht was lost to the ocean. The survivors in an interview stated they were shaken and left in shock by the near-death experience. A family went on a sailing adventure when their little boat got surrounded by orcas. The orcas, in full aggressive mode, began ramming the boat, damaging the rudder. The small boat rocked violently as water rushed in, and the kids began to scream at the top of their lungs. The father managed to send out a distress signal before the boat capsized. The mother and one of the children were rescued. Sadly, the father and the other child were lost to the sea. A solo kayaker near the Canary Islands faced a truly frightening situation when orcas surrounded his kayak. Orcas are known to be group hunters. They hunt their prey together. This solo kayaker was unfortunate to become the target of the pod of orcas, which aggressively bumped his kayak, tipping it over. The kayaker attempted to get back into his kayak, but the orcas' continuous assault left no room for that. After hours, a passing boat noticed the overturned kayak and sent out a distress signal to the appropriate authorities. The rescuers arrived and found the overturned kayak, but the kayaker was never recovered. A solo yachtsman in Spain was caught off guard by a pod of orcas. The yachtsman was someone who loved to enjoy nature, so he decided to go on a solo yacht trip. His trip was going well until a pod of orcas began circling his boat. The sailor tried his best to run away, but the orcas had already disabled his rudder, making his efforts useless. The boat's hull had cracked, and water began to fill the vessel. He quickly donned a life vest and hopped into a raft, escaping the yacht and contacting rescue services to save him just in time before the yacht sank. Now on a raft, he became an easier target for the orcas, who continued bumping the raft multiple times, filling the man with fear. The frightened sailor also shot up a flare to signal passing boats to his location. After being stranded on a raft for hours, a passing cargo ship noticed him and pulled him to safety. A whale-watching adventure off the coast of the Azores went from a fun sighting event to a nightmare. The nightmare began when orcas started attacking the boat. The presence of whales usually signifies the presence of orcas, since orcas are natural whale hunters. Most of the passengers on this boat were children who were excited to see the majestic marine animals, only to begin screaming just minutes later. The boat rocked violently as the ramming continued. The captain had no way of maneuvering away since the orcas had already disabled the rudder. With only one option at hand, the captain called for help. Soon, the boat began sinking.
A few minutes later, the rescue team made their way to the boat and discovered that many of the passengers had gotten hurt, and one child was actually missing. The incident remained etched into the memories of the children and the parents who witnessed it. A group of tourists went on a whale-watching tour near the Canary Islands. Their day went from being an exciting experience to an horrific experience they all wished to forget when the orcas attacked. Earlier, as the orcas approached, the tourists' faces were plastered with smiles, eager to capture pictures of the majestic marine creatures. The smile on their faces disappeared when the orcas began ramming the hull. The impact of this action was strong enough to make some tourists lose balance. The resulting effects ranged from simple panic to several tourists injured. Immediately, the Coast Guard got word of what was going on. He sent a team in to rescue the tourists. Not long after the team had completely evacuated the tourists, did the boat begin to sink. Thankfully, some of the tourists just received minor injuries and no lives were lost. A group of kayakers near the Canary Island got caught in a dangerous situation when a pod of orcas began to circle them. The group remained together as that was their only chance of survival. Constant pressure from the orcas made one of the kayakers stray from the group. This kayaker became an easy target. The orcas repeatedly bumped into his kayak until it flipped. He held onto his kayak, desperately trying to flip it back over. The orcas, aggressive as ever, continued to hit him. His friends were powerless to physically help him. All they could do was race back to the shore to get help. When help finally arrived, it was already too late. The kayaker had drowned, leaving his friends devastated. A yacht club outing in Portugal went from a day to flaunt luxury to a day of chaos when multiple yachts were attacked by orcas. The orcas focused their ramming on the rudders, causing several boats to lose their ability to steer. Soon, the ramming caused holes in the yachts, and they began to take on water. Multiple distress signals were sent out, and within minutes, multiple rescue boats scrambled to the area, assisting the yachts that were attacked by the orcas. One yacht in particular wasn't as lucky as the rest. It didn't just gain holes in its hull, it also capsized, throwing the passengers into the sea. The rescuers were able to save most of the passengers, but one was never found. This event shook many members of the club, leading them to suspend most yacht events in honor of the lost passenger. A father had convinced his teenage children to join him on a sailboat adventure. A few hours into the trip, they encountered a pod of orcas near Gibraltar. From afar, the orcas appeared playful. But just as the sailboat got close enough, the orcas switched from playful to fully aggressive and began ramming into the hull of the sailboat. Since the boat itself wasn't particularly big, each hit from the orcas sent shudders through it. Not long after that, the boat began to crack and water seeped into it. The father quickly let out a distress call. He was quite experienced in situations like this, as his job revolved around conducting marine studies. Despite the father's experience, he had no idea how the orcas could be stopped. Soon, a rescue vessel arrived just as the boat began to submerge, saving the family at the nick of time. A group of fishermen near Gibraltar had a bone-chilling experience on one of their fishing adventures. They went from being the hunters to the hunted, as their boat was attacked by an aggressive pod of orcas that rammed it repeatedly. The impact caused a hole in the boat and it began taking on water. Frightened, the crew sent out a distress signal. The boat's rudder, which is used to control the direction of the vessel, was destroyed, so they had no hope of escaping, at least not by themselves. The orcas relentlessly attacked the boat until it eventually capsized. The panic of the crew members was now at its peak as they held onto the debris of the boat for dear life. The orcas eventually left them. By the time the rescue team made it to the crew, all but one of them were safe. The current had swept one of them away. The open sea, once considered a place of adventure and discovery, has become an arena of unexpected danger. Orcas, known as the apex predators of the ocean, are targeting boats with increasing frequency and aggression. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a disturbing trend that's leaving sailors shaken and experts baffled. Let's dive into the shocking and horrific reality of orca attacks at sea. On July 29, 2020, off the coast of Galicia, Spain, a 12-meter yacht named Mirfak was peacefully sailing when it suddenly lost steering control. The cause? A pod of orcas ramming the vessel's rudder. The two-person crew sent out a distress call, and the boat had to be towed to port for repairs. This incident marked one of the first widely reported aggressive orca encounters in the region, setting the stage for what was to come. Just 2 weeks later, on August 14, 2020, another incident occurred near Porto, Portugal. The 14.2-meter yacht Rastion was surrounded by 9 orcas. For 45 minutes, the animals battered the boat,
causing significant damage to the rudder. The crew of 4 was eventually rescued by the Portuguese Coast Guard. This attack showcased the coordinated nature of these orca pod assaults, a pattern that would become all too familiar in the months to come. The frequency of attacks escalated rapidly. On August 30th, 2020, near Barbate, Spain, the yacht Aventura Plus fell victim to a particularly aggressive encounter. A pod of 5 to 7 orcas targeted the vessel, focusing their attacks on the rudder. The impact was so severe that the boat's steering system was completely destroyed. The crew of 6 had to be towed to safety, their voyage cut short by this unexpected marine assault. September 2020 saw a flurry of incidents. On September 11th, the sailing vessel Freedom Will was attacked off the coast of Cape Trafalgar, Spain. The orcas struck with such force that the boat's rudder shaft was bent, rendering it inoperable. The following day, September 12th, 3 separate attacks were reported in the Strait of Gibraltar. One of these involved the yacht Kookaroo X, which had its rudder snapped clean off by the force of the orca assault. As autumn progressed, the attacks showed no signs of abating. On October 4, 2020, the 14-meter catamaran Kvitfjell was targeted near A Coruña, Spain. The orca's assault lasted for over an hour, leaving the vessel with significant damage to its rudders and keel. This incident highlighted that even larger, more stable vessels like catamarans were not immune to these aggressive encounters. The year 2021 brought no respite from the orca onslaught. On April 2nd, near the Strait of Gibraltar, the yacht Colomba faced a terrifying ordeal. A pod of orcas repeatedly rammed the boat for over an hour, causing it to spin uncontrollably. The crew of 3 was eventually rescued, but the yacht suffered extensive damage to its rudder and keel. One of the most alarming incidents of 2021 occurred on May 21st when 3 orcas targeted the Shangri-La, a 14.5-meter yacht, near Barbate, Spain. The attack lasted for 45 minutes and was so violent that it broke the boat's rudder shaft. This case stood out because it was captured on video, providing researchers with valuable footage to study the orca's behavior during these encounters. The summer of 2021 saw a continuation of these aggressive interactions. On July 9th, near the Strait of Gibraltar, the sailing yacht Mystique was surrounded by a pod of 6 to 8 orcas. The animals took turns ramming the boat's rudder, eventually breaking it. The crew of 4 had to be towed to port, their vessel rendered unsteerable by the assault. As the frequency of attacks increased, so did their geographic range. On August 1st, 2021, an incident was reported off the coast of Plymouth, England, much further north than previous encounters. The 26-foot yacht Proteus was attacked by 3 orcas, sustaining damage to its rudder. This event raised concerns that the aggressive behavior might be spreading to orca populations beyond the Iberian coast. The attacks continued into the autumn months. On September 11th, 2021, the yacht Smoose faced a harrowing encounter off the coast of A Coruña, Spain. A pod of orcas targeted the vessel for over an hour, causing significant damage to the rudder and keel. The 4 crew members were eventually rescued, but the incident left them deeply shaken. As we moved into 2022, the pattern of attacks showed no signs of slowing. On March 3, 2022, near Gibraltar, the sailing yacht Albaran Champagne was struck by 3 orcas. The impact was so severe that it broke the boat's rudder, leaving it adrift. The crew of 3 had to be assisted by the Spanish Maritime Safety Agency, highlighting the ongoing danger these encounters pose to sailors in the region. A particularly notable incident occurred on May 4, 2022, near the Strait of Gibraltar. The high-speed ferry Jet Ceuta, carrying 217 passengers and 22 crew members, was surrounded by a pod of orcas. While ferries had generally been considered too large to be at risk, this encounter challenged that assumption. Fortunately, the ferry's size and speed allowed it to continue its journey without sustaining damage, but the incident raised concerns about potential risks to larger vessels. The summer of 2022 brought more frequent and intense encounters. On July 31st, off the coast of Sines, Portugal, the 12-meter sailboat Neve was attacked by a pod of 5 orcas. The assault lasted for over an hour, with the orcas repeatedly ramming the rudder until it was completely destroyed. The 2-person crew had to be rescued by the Portuguese Maritime Police. their voyage abruptly ended by this unexpected marine aggression. As the attacks continued, they began to attract international media attention. On August 19, 2022, the yacht Marianne was targeted near A Coruña, Spain. The Orca's assault was so aggressive that it not only destroyed the rudder, but also caused damage to the hull. This incident was widely reported in the press, bringing the issue of orca attacks to global attention and sparking debates about maritime safety in affected regions. The final months of 2022 saw no decrease in orca aggression. On October 28, near Viana do Castelo, Portugal, the sailing vessel Smack encountered a pod of orcas that proceeded to ram the boat repeatedly. The attack lasted for 45 minutes and resulted in significant damage to the rudder and steering system. The crew of 3 was eventually rescued, but the incident left them traumatized and their boat in need of extensive repairs. As we entered 2023, the frequency and intensity of attacks showed no signs of abating. On January 16, 2023, off the coast of Barbate, Spain, the yacht Miro faced a prolonged assault by a pod of orcas. The attack lasted for over 2 hours, with the animals taking turns ramming the rudder and hull. The 3-person crew managed to radio for help and were eventually towed to safety, but the incident left their vessel with extensive damage. A particularly alarming encounter occurred on March 3, 2023, near the Strait of Gibraltar. The sailing yacht Albaran Champagne was targeted by a group of orcas that displayed what appeared to be coordinated attack behavior. The pod split into 2 groups, with one distracting the crew at the bow while the other focused on damaging the rudder. This level of apparent coordination raised new concerns about the evolving nature of these orca boat interactions. Spring 2023 brought no respite from the attacks. On April 21st, the catamaran Himbertoni was assaulted by orcas off the coast of Tarifa, Spain. Despite its larger size and dual-hull design, the catamaran suffered significant damage to both rudders. This incident challenged the notion that larger or more stable vessels might be less vulnerable to orca attacks. One of the most recent and widely reported incidents took place on May 17, 2023, near the Strait of Gibraltar. The yacht Swiss Kiss was attacked by a pod of orcas for over an hour. The assault was so severe that it not only destroyed the rudder, but also caused the boat to take on water. The 4-person crew had to be dramatically rescued by helicopter, with footage of the rescue making international news and bringing renewed attention to the ongoing issue of orca attacks. These documented attacks represent only a fraction of the reported incidents. According to data from the Atlantic Orca Working Group, there were 207 reported orca boat interactions in 2022, up from 141 in 2021. As of August 2023, there had already been 350 reported interactions, indicating an alarming upward trend. The increasing frequency and intensity of these attacks have left sailors, scientists, and authorities scrambling for explanations and solutions. Dr. Renaud de Stefanis, a researcher at the Coordinating for the Study of Marine Mammals, CIRSE, has been studying these incidents closely. He suggests that the behavior might have started with a traumatic experience involving a single orca, possibly a collision with a boat, which then spread to other members of the pod. Other experts like Dr. Jared Towers, a researcher with Canada's Department of Fisheries and Oceans, propose that this might be a new form of play behavior that has caught on within the orca population. However, he emphasizes that more research is needed to understand the motivations behind these encounters fully. There are also concerns about potential environmental factors. Dr. Ruth Esteban, a researcher at the Madeira Whale Museum, has suggested that changes in the marine ecosystem, possibly due to climate change or overfishing, might be altering orca behavior in ways we don't yet fully understand. In response to these incidents, authorities in affected areas have implemented new guidelines for sailors. The Spanish Ministry of Transport, Mobility and Urban Agenda has issued recommendations including turning off engines, lowering sails, and keeping hands off the wheel when orcas approach. The idea is to make the boat as uninteresting as possible to the animals. Some regions have taken even more drastic measures. In July 2023, the Spanish government implemented a temporary ban on sailing for vessels under 15 meters in length in certain areas off the country's northwestern coast, a region particularly affected by orca attacks. Despite these precautions, the unpredictability and intensity of these attacks have left even experienced sailors feeling vulnerable on the open sea. The incidents have had real-world impacts beyond individual encounters. Some sailing races have altered their routes to avoid orca hotspots, and insurance companies are taking note, with some considering raising premiums for boats in affected areas. As research continues and new incidents occur, crucial questions remain. Will these attacks continue to escalate? Can humans find a way to coexist peacefully with orcas in shared marine environments? What can be done to protect human lives while also respecting these intelligent and powerful marine predators? The ongoing saga of orca attacks serves as a stark reminder of nature's unpredictability and power. As we continue to venture into the oceans, we must recognize that we're entering a world where we are not the apex predator. The true rulers of the sea are out there, and recent events have shown they're not always as predictable or benign as we once believed. It's crucial to note that while these incidents are alarming, they're still relatively rare considering the amount of maritime activity in these waters. According to the International Maritime Organization, there are over 50,000 merchant ships operating internationally. When compared to this number, the orca interactions, while increasing, still represent a small percentage of overall maritime activity. However, the trend is undeniable and concerning. As we move forward, it will be crucial for scientists, sailors, and policymakers to work together to understand this phenomenon better and develop effective strategies to mitigate risks while respecting marine life. For now, the message is clear. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember that when you set sail, you're entering their territory. The oceans hold wonders beyond imagination, but as these incidents prove, they also harbor dangers that demand our respect and caution. The story of orcas and their interactions with boats is far from over, and each new encounter adds another chapter to this unfolding maritime drama.
For centuries, sailors have spun tales of sea monsters lurking in the depths, giant squids dragging ships to their doom, mermaids luring unsuspecting crews on the jagged rocks. These myths and legends have haunted maritime history, filling the hearts of seafarers with dread. But now, a new threat has emerged, one that's all too real, and it's turning the waters of the Strait of Gibraltar into a battleground. Killer whales, the apex predators of the ocean, are launching coordinated attacks on boats, and nobody knows why. Since 2020, the waters off the coast of Spain and Morocco have become a danger zone. Orcas have been ramming boats in the Strait of Gibraltar, a narrow waterway linking the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. And with each passing year, these attacks have grown more frequent and more violent. Imagine you're sailing through the strait on a sunny day. The water's calm, the wind's in your favor. Then, without warning, they appear. Massive black and white torpedoes surging towards your boat. Before you can react, they're slamming into the hull again and again. The whole vessel shakes. Water starts seeping in and you realize this is no accident. They're trying to sink you. This isn't some far-fetched scenario. It's really happening multiple times, and it's happening more and more often. On July 31st, 2022, just 11 kilometers off the Portuguese coast, a group of orcas launched a sudden attack on a sailing yacht. They came out of nowhere, sweeping in silently beneath the waves. Then, they torpedoed into the hull, ramming it over and over. The attack was so violent, so relentless that it caused serious structural damage. Water began pouring in. What started as a freak encounter quickly turned into a life-or-death emergency. The crew had no choice. They sent out a mayday call and abandoned ship. Moments later, their yacht sank into the depths, claimed by the sea and the orcas that rule it. But what makes this more troubling is that it wasn't random. The orcas had detected the vibrations of the boat from far away. They targeted the crew deliberately, and this was just the beginning. Fast forward to November 1st, 2022, another sailing yacht, another pod of orcas. This time, 22 kilometers off the coast of Portugal, the killer whales circled the boat, their towering dorsal fins slicing through the surface like a swarm of sharks closing in for the kill. The sailors watched in horror, knowing what was coming next. Now, it's worth noting that despite their fearsome reputation, orcas don't typically hunt humans. Most orca-related fatalities happen in captivity. But these wild encounters were different. They were spreading among sailors like wildfire, each story more terrifying than the last. The Strait of Gibraltar isn't some remote, rarely visited waterway. It's one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Over 300 vessels pass through every single day. Massive container ships, luxury cruise liners, small fishing boats, they all use this crucial route, which makes these orca attacks all the more baffling and dangerous. May 4, 2023, the crew of the sailboat Leon O.T. Champagne were making their way through the strait when they heard it. A loud thud that shook the entire vessel. Before they could process what was happening, 3 orcas were charging their boat repeatedly, but it gets worse. 2 smaller orcas grabbed the rudder with their powerful jaws, while a large one used his body as a battering ram against the yacht's hull. The damage was catastrophic. The crew had no choice but to call in the Coast Guard. They were rescued, but the Champagne, it sank to the bottom of the strait, another victim of these mysterious attacks. But the orcas weren't done yet, not by a long shot. In November 2023, a Polish sailing yacht named the Grady Mama fell prey to their relentless assaults. Like the others before it, it was attacked, damaged beyond repair, and sunk. The numbers are staggering. Between 2020 and 2024, 700 encounters between sailors and orcas were recorded in this region. 700! Let that sink in. That's nearly one incident every day for 4 years straight, and it's not stopping. On May 12, 2024, just a few months ago, the yacht Albaran Konak became the latest victim. Despite sending out a distress call, it too succumbed to the orca's attack and sank beneath the waves. Scientists are baffled. They're scrambling to understand what's driving this behavior. Why are these typically majestic, intelligent creatures suddenly turning into boat-destroying terrors? Some researchers think it might be about revenge. They point to an orca named Gladys, who was injured after being struck by a boat. Could this be payback? Are the orcas holding a grudge against all boats for the actions of one? Others believe it's about competition. The Strait of Gibraltar is rich in marine life, including bluefin tuna, a favorite prey of both orcas and human fishermen. Could the killer whales be seeing boats as rivals, trying to drive them out of their hunting grounds? Then there's the play theory. Orcas are known for their intelligence and playful behavior. Some scientists suggest that they may be treating the boats like giant toys, but if it's a game, it's a deadly one for the sailors caught in the middle. Another idea is that it's a reaction to frustration. When boats detect orcas nearby, they often turn off their propellers and avoid injuring the animals. But could this sudden silence be confusing or aggravating the orcas, provoking them into attack?
Holy hit the boat.
What's even more alarming is that this behavior isn't staying confined to the Strait of Gibraltar, it's spreading. A Dutch sailor named Wim Rudden was sailing in the North Sea, far from the usual hotspot of these attacks. Suddenly, his peaceful voyage turned into a nightmare. An orca appeared and began ramming his yacht repeatedly. Rudden feared for his life, trapped on a damaged boat with an aggressive killer whale circling him. Even professional sailors aren't immune. During the ocean race, a grueling round-the-world sailing competition, competitors found themselves under attack near the Strait of Gibraltar. The orcas rammed the underside of their high-tech racing yacht.
We got hit by some orcas. 3 orcas came at us, straight at us, and they started hitting the rudder.
Quick thinking saved them. They managed to stop the attack by slowing their boat down, but it was a close call. One that shows just how unpredictable and dangerous these encounters can be. Authorities aren't sitting idle while this is happening. They've taken action, satellite tagging 6 orcas from the part of the Iberian Peninsula. These tags allow scientists to track the whales' movements, hoping to predict when they might strike next. Sailors in the area are being warned to stay vigilant and report any orca activity immediately. But is it enough? Some scientists worry that this behavior could be more than just a passing fad. If it continues, if it spreads to more pods or different regions, it could spiral out of control. The statistics are alarming. Around 20% of the vessels attacked have been so badly damaged that they couldn't continue their journeys. That's 1 in 5 boats effectively destroyed by these encounters. And while there haven't been any serious human injuries just yet, many fear it's only a matter of time. So what does this all mean? What are we witnessing here in the Strait of Gibraltar? Is this the start of a new era of maritime danger? Are we seeing nature push back against human encroachment on the seas? Or is it something else entirely, something we haven't even considered yet? One thing's for sure, these attacks force us to confront some uncomfortable truths. They remind us that for all our technology, all our mastery over the seas, we're still at the mercy of the natural world. They show us that there's still so much we don't understand about the creatures we share this planet with. The Orcas of Gibraltar are challenging our assumptions. They're proven to be more complex, more unpredictable, and potentially more dangerous than we ever imagined. They're not movie villains or theme park attractions. They're wild animals, apex predators with their own agendas and motivations that we only are beginning to grasp. As we wrap up, consider this. The next time you hear about an orca attack, remember, there's more to this story than just damaged boats or scared sailors. It's about changing a world, a mysterious behavior, and a species that might be far more intelligent and adaptable than we ever gave them credit for. Maybe one day we'll crack the code. Maybe we'll figure out why these orcas are doing what they're doing. But until then, the mystery remains, and the waters of the Strait of Gibraltar remain a battleground in a war we just don't understand. For now, sailors must remain vigilant, scientists must keep searching for answers, and the rest of us, we can only watch and wait, wondering what these powerful creatures will do next. The story of the Gibraltar orcas is far from over. It's a reminder that the ocean is vast, powerful, and full of secrets, and sometimes those secrets have teeth. What are your thoughts on why orcas are attacking boats, and what can be done to protect these powerful and beautiful creatures?
SeaWorld's thrilling Orca shows hide a darker truth about the powerful animals they try to tame. Malia, an orca born in captivity, seemed calm until one quiet June day when her instincts took over. A trainer stood too close and Malia's jaws snapped shut, trapping the trainer's arm and breaking the illusion of control. What followed was a cover-up, leaving a haunting question. Can we ever truly control the wild? Malia is the daughter of Nanali and Tilikum. She has lived all her life at SeaWorld Orlando. Basically, that's her home. Born and raised in captivity, she's grown familiar with human interaction. Yet beneath her trained demeanor, Malia remains a powerful predator by nature. In 2022, Malia was just 15 years old when the unimaginable happened. Orcas are called killer whales. And as their name implies, they kill and eat things that are even way bigger than them. If that didn't justify just how terrifying they are, I would have you know that these very incredible creatures eat salmon, schooling fish, squid, seals, sea lions, porpoises, and other whale species, and they eat the water's most popular and very feared predator, the sharks. This behavior demonstrates the extraordinary power and dominance orcas hold in the marine world. On the 13th day of June in the year 2022, it was reported that after a show that dazzled the crowd and left them in a very delightful mode, a trainer was rushed to the hospital. Many reports say that the incident was buried away by SeaWorld Orlando, but after a lot of investigation, an investigator by the name of Eric Sandoval finally got his hands on the gruesome report on the event that finally uncovered the story, shedding light on what really happened, right after a dazzling show. After the wonderful show on the 13th of June, Malia, the star orca of the show, had a few debris in her mouth, which consisted of food particles and paint amongst her teeth and the roof of her mouth. A trainer used the pressurized spray bottle to rinse Malia's mouth, but what she essentially did wrong was that she neglected the rule of standing 3 feet away. While she was having the time of her life, the orca suddenly closed its mouth. The investigator noted that the beautiful but yet very powerful intelligent apex predator must have felt tickled as the trainer was using the pressurized spray to rinse its mouth, causing it to suddenly close its mouth. The trainer was rushed to the hospital, and after a lot of surgery, the trainer broke and fractured a few bones in her wrist and forearm. After the surgery at Orlando Regional Medical Center, the trainer survived. OSHA Occupational Safety and Health Administration final report did not charge SeaWorld of any safety violations. The report stated that no citations would be issued because no specific OSHA safety standards apply, and the incident is not considered appropriate at this time to invoke the General Duty Clause. Unlike the case on the 24th of February in the year 2010, where Malia's dad, Tilikum, killed Don Brancheau, a trainer in the middle of the show, OSHA found SeaWorld in 4 safety violations. The story of Don Brancheau and Tilikum is both terrifying and tragic, detailing in truth that no matter the training given to these wonderful creatures and the bond established with them by humans, Mother Nature still runs what goes on in their lives. Dawn was inspired by her first visit to SeaWorld at the age of 10. At that moment, she watched the iconic Shamu leap out of the water. She was filled with awe, and from that moment, she knew she wanted to become a marine animal trainer. Her mother was supportive of her dreams, after seeing her daughter's eyes light up like those stars. As Dawn grew up, her career path became clear. She attended the University of South Carolina, majoring in psychology and animal behavior, which provided her the foundational knowledge she needed for her future in animal training. After college, she worked with dolphins at an attraction in New Jersey, which sharpened her skills a great deal and helped her in learning more about marine animals before finally securing her dream job at SeaWorld. Her love for animals extended beyond her job. She also volunteered at animal shelters and cared for a variety of animals at home, including her 2 Labrador retrievers. Her dedication to fitness and well-being also underscored her commitment to her role, as she maintained peak physical condition to work safely with the massive creatures she loved with the whole of her heart. Dawn's story took a darker turn when she began working with Tilikum, an orca whose past was dipped in trauma, washed off with loneliness and air dried with fear. He was first captured off the coast of Iceland at the age of 2. Tilikum was separated from his family and transported to a small tank at a marine zoo where he was held in isolation. All alone, all he did was swim in circles and lay motionless in the water as even the insides of a tank lacked tides to catch even a little fun. Eventually, he was moved to Sealand of the Pacific, a poorly maintained facility on Vancouver Island. Tilikum shared a tank with 2 older female orcas, Haida II and Nootka IV. In the wild, female orcas generally occupy the top of the social hierarchy, and these 2 often asserted dominance over the young Tilikum. Sometimes it gets violent. The constant stress and lack of space led him to develop stomach ulcers and resulted in his isolation in a medical pool to prevent further attacks. Sealand's staff recognized Tilikum's declining mental state, so they sought the advice of Bruce Stevens, a former SeaWorld head trainer. Stevens strictly warned them that the orcas needed more stimulation and engagement to prevent boredom and aggression, but the facility lacked resources to implement sufficient improvements. Despite the warnings, Sealand failed to meet the animals' needs, and the stress manifested in very dangerous and aggressive behaviors. 1991 was the first time Tilikum took a life, and he didn't do it alone. The incident occurred at Sealand when Kelty Byrne, a part-time trainer and university student, accidentally fell into the tank with Tilikum and the other orcas. The orcas, maybe acting out years of pent-up stress, attacked her. They dragged her under the water repeatedly until she gave up the ghost. This horrifying incident led Sealand to close permanently, and Tilikum was sold to SeaWorld, despite concerns about his history of aggression. By the time Tilikum arrived at SeaWorld in 1992, he had already been involved in 1 fatality, but his enormous size and potential for drawing in crowds made him a valuable asset. However, the incidents didn't stop. In 1999, he was linked to another strange fatality involving a homeless man who had snuck into SeaWorld and was later found dead in Tilikum's tank. Despite this, SeaWorld continued to use him in shows, including those featuring Dawn, who had spent years working closely with him. On February 24, 2010, a day like any other at SeaWorld, tragedy struck. During the Dine with Shamu show, Dawn was performing alongside Tilikum, who seemed calm and responsive. She had been petting him, their bond evident to the spectators enjoying their meals nearby. But in a shocking and violent turn, Tilikum suddenly grabbed her ponytail and pulled her into the water. Some witnesses reported that he had seized her by the arm or shoulder instead, but the fact remained that she was dragged under, subjected to an aggressive attack that lasted several minutes. Trainers rushed to intervene as fast as they could. They used nets and food to try to distract him, but Tilikum did not release her until it was too late. The autopsy revealed the horrific extent of Dawn's injuries. Her jaw was shattered, a portion of her spine was broken, her left arm was dislocated, and she suffered multiple fractures. She had drowned due to brute force inflicted by Tilikum. The attack sent shockwaves through SeaWorld and the public, casting a spotlight on the ethical questions surrounding the captivity of such powerful and intelligent animals. Can these creatures truly be domesticated? Following Dawn's death, SeaWorld faced intense scrutiny, not only from the public, but also from government agencies. OSHA found SeaWorld at fault for multiple safety violations. OSHA specifically cited the following safety violations. 1. Failure to provide adequate barriers. OSHA found that SeaWorld did not have proper physical barriers or sufficient safety protocols in place to protect trainers working in close contact with orcas, which created a serious risk of injury or death. Trainers performed in close proximity to Tilikum and other large orcas, exposing themselves to danger without adequate protective measures. 2. Lack of protective equipment and procedures. OSHA highlighted that SeaWorld failed to implement protective equipment or procedural safeguards that could have prevented direct contact between trainers and orcas, especially with Tilikum, known to have a history of aggressive incidents. OSHA suggested that more protective equipment and tools should have been utilized to reduce the risks associated with training and performances. 3. Negligence in recognizing hazards. OSHA determined that SeaWorld had been negligent in recognizing and mitigating hazards presented by Tilikum's behavioral history, including his previous involvement in fatalities. SeaWorld continued to allow close interactions without additional precautions, despite knowledge of these risks. And 4. Failure to train employees in safety protocols. SeaWorld was also cited for not providing adequate training on safety protocols that could help mitigate dangers when working with large marine animals. OSHA noted that the training programs lacked the necessary depth to prepare trainers for handling situations involving potentially aggressive animals like Tilikum. These OSHA violations led to SeaWorld being fined $75,000, with the most serious violation being classified as willful, because SeaWorld knowingly disregarded the need for better protections and precautions. The tragedy even inspired the documentary Blackfish, which examined the captivity and treatment of orcas in marine parks, sparking a public outcry and calls for reform in how these creatures are housed and used for entertainment. This incident prompted OSHA to mandate that trainers could no longer have direct contact with orcas without physical barriers or other protection. Despite Tilikum's involvement in multiple fatalities, he remained at SeaWorld until his own death in 2017, reportedly due to a lung infection. In 2022, after the incident involving Malia, renewed questions emerged over SeaWorld's safety protocols. Critics and animal rights advocates questioned if additional and more robust safety protocols had been put in place to make working with these intelligent, apex predators safer. SeaWorld Orlando refrained from giving a detailed response, but did issue a statement through a spokesperson. He said that the well-being of both animals and staff is a top priority. The spokesperson emphasized that extensive training, safety procedures, and continual evaluations were in place to ensure a safe environment for all the animals and their employees, highlighting that SeaWorld strives to balance animal welfare and trainer safety. OSHA records show that, since the fatal 2010 incident with Dawn Brancheau, SeaWorld has experienced no additional fatalities involving orcas, which the company views as an indicator of the improved safety measures. While there have been incidents, no other deadly attacks have occurred, suggesting that the updated policies have had a significant impact. However, some experts continue to argue that these precautions may not be sufficient when dealing with powerful social animals like orcas, whose needs may be difficult to fulfill in captivity. They argue that these complex animals often exhibit stress and abnormal behaviors, potentially contributing to unpredictable actions despite the protocols in place. SeaWorld's response, and evolving safety practices show the ongoing debate over the ethical and logistical challenges of keeping large marine mammals in captivity, balancing entertainment, education, and the need for humane treatment. The incident with Dawn remains a stark reminder of the inherent risks involved in dealing with these powerful creatures, prompting ongoing evaluations to ensure the safety of both trainers and animals alike.
SeaWorld's thrilling Orca shows hide a darker truth about the powerful animals they try to tame. Malia, an orca born in captivity, seemed calm until one quiet June day when her instincts took over. A trainer stood too close, and Malia's jaws snapped shut, trapping the trainer's arm and breaking the illusion of control. What followed was a cover-up, leaving a haunting question. Can we ever truly control the wild? Malia is the daughter of Nanali and Tilikum. She has lived all her life at SeaWorld Orlando. Basically, that's her home. Born and raised in captivity, she's grown familiar with human interaction. Yet beneath her trained demeanor, Malia remains a powerful predator by nature. In 2022, Malia was just 15 years old when the unimaginable happened. Orcas are called killer whales, and as their name implies, they kill and eat things that are even way bigger than them. If that didn't justify just how terrifying they are, I would have you know that these very incredible creatures eat salmon, schooling fish, squid, seals, sea lions, porpoises, and other whale species, and they eat the water's most popular and very feared predator, the sharks.
The open sea feels calm and boundless, until a sudden, violent jolt shatters the silence. Shadows circle beneath the water, massive shapes lurking just out of view. Then, without warning, they strike, a pod of orcas ramming your boat with fierce, calculated force. These aren't ordinary encounters. They're targeted attacks by the ocean's top predators, leaving people stranded, vulnerable, and desperate for escape. The day had started like any other for the marine research team aboard the Oceanic Explorer. They'd ventured into the calm, glistening waters near the Strait of Gibraltar, ready to study the migration patterns of local marine life. The sun was bright, the ocean stretched endlessly around them, and all seemed quiet and serene. The researchers, deeply absorbed in their work, had no reason to suspect anything out of the ordinary. For hours, they recorded data, noted sightings, and adjusted their equipment, aware only of the gentle rise and fall of the waves. Then, just as one researcher was setting up the sonar to monitor nearby schools of fish, there was a hard, sudden jolt. The whole boat shook. Startled, the team looked around, their eyes searching the water for the source. Before they could react, another jolt struck from below, harder this time, knocking one researcher off balance. It took them a moment to realize they weren't alone. The shadows moved below, dark, massive, and circling. The research team quickly recognized the creatures beneath them, orcas. But something about their movements was unsettling. These weren't just passing animals curious about the vessel. These orcas had an agenda. Suddenly, the calm waters erupted as one of the orcas slammed directly into the boat's side, causing equipment to rattle and spill overboard. The vessel lurched dangerously, throwing the researchers into each other and sending stacks of notes and instruments sliding across the deck. Heartbeats quickened as they braced themselves, realizing this was more than a casual encounter. As the boat steadied momentarily, one researcher managed to get to their feet and reach for the radio. They fumbled, trying to send out a mayday call. But before the signal went through, another, even more powerful impact knocked the wind out of them. The orcas were relentless, ramming the boat with frightening precision, and each hit seemed to be targeted directly at the vessel's rudder and hull. The crew could hear the grinding sound of metal twisting under pressure as one of the orcas struck again, aiming low and shattering part of the protective metal guard around the rudder. With each blow, the boat rocked more violently, throwing everyone off balance. The radio crackled to life as the desperate mayday went through, and the captain managed to shout their coordinates before another blow nearly capsized the boat. But even as he tried to keep everyone calm, his face betrayed his fear. He knew this wasn't a typical orca encounter. Something had set these animals off, and there was no telling how long the boat could withstand the repeated attacks. Meanwhile, the orcas showed no signs of stopping. Through the water's surface, the researchers caught glimpses of the sleek black and white bodies circling, their dorsal fins cutting through the waves like silent daggers. The largest orca, likely the leader, charged once more, targeting the rudder with terrifying accuracy. It seemed almost as if it knew exactly where to hit to immobilize the vessel. With each impact, the situation grew more dire. The equipment on board, essential for their research, lay scattered and broken, some of it lost to the sea entirely. Water began to seep in through cracks in the hull, and the boat's once sturdy framework started to groan under the relentless assault. One researcher tried to secure what equipment he could, only to stumble and fall as another jolt sent him sprawling. They all knew they couldn't hold out much longer. The Mayday signal had gone out, but time felt stretched thin as they waited, hoping desperately for a rescue. Meanwhile, the Orcas continued to batter the vessel, and every minute felt like an eternity. One researcher clung to the edge, her knuckles white as she stared wide-eyed at the water, watching as a juvenile orca surfaced just feet away from her, a large piece of fiberglass clutched in its mouth like a trophy. The sight chilled her. These creatures weren't just attacking. They seemed to be learning, practicing. Finally, after what felt like hours, a rescue vessel's lights appeared on the horizon, cutting through the haze of salt spray and sunlight. Relief swept over the research team, but their ordeal wasn't over yet. The boat was now dangerously low in the water, tilting from the damage sustained. The Orcas, sensing the new presence, began to retreat slowly, though they didn't vanish entirely. They continued to circle, watching as the rescue crew approached. The rescuers worked quickly, throwing lines and pulling the battered crew to safety, but the damage to the oceanic explorer was undeniable. As the last of the researchers scrambled onto the rescue boat, they looked back to see their vessel listing to one side, water pouring in through gaping holes left by the attacks. Within minutes, the research boat began to sink, finally claimed by the relentless sea. Safe but shaken, the team watched as the Orcas, now calm, almost indifferent, swam away, disappearing into the depths as though the attack had been nothing more than a game. For the researchers, however, it was an experience that would haunt them. These animals, which they had studied and respected, had shown them a side they had never anticipated, a side that defied explanation and challenged their understanding of orca behavior. Back on land, the research team recounted their story to colleagues and reporters, their voices filled with lingering disbelief. Many of them had spent years studying marine life, including orcas, and had always viewed these creatures as intelligent, social animals. But this encounter left them with questions they couldn't answer. Why had the orcas targeted them so relentlessly? Was it play, aggression, or something else altogether? The boat's severe damage was a stark reminder of the raw power these animals held, and the team couldn't shake the feeling that they'd witnessed a behavior that went beyond anything in the scientific literature. But just when you thought it couldn't get worse, another family's peaceful day on the water turned into an unthinkable nightmare. It was a perfect day for sailing, the kind of day the Smith family had been dreaming of since they planned their trip. The sky was clear, the sun sparkled on the water, and the gentle breeze filled their sails as they ventured out into the open sea near the Strait of Gibraltar. The children, Sarah and Lucas, leaned over the boat's railing, laughing with wide-eyed excitement at every splash and ripple, hoping for a glimpse of something incredible. Little did they know, their wish would soon be granted, but in a way that would turn their joy into terror. As they sailed, Sarah spotted a shadow moving under the water, pointing it out to her family with a gleeful squeal. Her eyes were alight with wonder. The shadow grew larger, and soon, several sleek black and white forms surfaced around the boat. Orcas. The family gasped, overwhelmed with awe. Lucas clutched his mother's hand, his gaze fixed on the majestic animals gliding effortlessly through the water beside them. To him, it felt like something out of a storybook, a magical encounter with creatures of the sea. The orcas seemed curious, circling the boat, occasionally dipping below the surface only to reappear a few feet away. For a few minutes, the Smiths watched in amazement, snapping pictures and leaning over the edge to get a better look. The father, John, kept one hand on the wheel, steering slowly, his face lit with a wide smile as he watched his children's excitement. This is the stuff memories are made of, he thought to himself. feeling a warmth of pride and happiness. But as quickly as their wonder had blossomed, it was shattered. The largest orca suddenly disappeared beneath the boat, followed by the others. John noticed it first, a slight uneasy feeling as the boat rocked in a way that didn't feel natural. And then it happened. A powerful jolt slammed into the side of the boat, nearly knocking them off their feet. Sarah let out a startled cry, clinging to her mother as the boat shook violently. Another impact came, and this time it felt as though the boat lifted out of the water for a split second before crashing back down. Panic set in. John frantically looked around, trying to figure out what was happening, but the answer became all too clear. The orcas were ramming the boat, their sleek bodies crashing into the hull with calculated force. The children's laughter had turned to frightened screams as they clung to their parents, their once wide eyes now filled with terror. The orcas showed no signs of stopping. They struck the boat again and again, targeting the rudder, causing the vessel to spin uncontrollably. Equipment scattered across the deck as the boat lurched, the sails flapping wildly. John struggled to maintain control, but it was useless. The rudder had been damaged, and the boat was now at the mercy of the orcas. As the attacks grew more intense, the boat began to take on water. John knew he needed to send a distress signal, but his focus was on keeping his family safe. He yelled over the chaos, telling everyone to grab life jackets and hold on. His wife, Emily, held Sarah and Lucas close, her voice shaking as she tried to reassure them. But deep down, she was just as terrified as they were, feeling utterly powerless against the force beneath the waves. In a final, devastating blow, the largest orca rammed the boat's side with enough power to tip it. The boat capsized, throwing the family into the icy water. Chaos erupted as they scrambled to stay afloat, each grasping for anything to hold on to. John surfaced, gasping, and immediately searched for his family, his heart pounding with dread. He spotted Lucas clinging to a piece of the broken hull, his face pale with fear. He swam over, pulling his son close and telling him to hold on tight. Nearby, he saw Emily struggling to keep Sarah above water. The waves crashed around them, and with each swell, the remnants of their boat drifted farther apart. The ocean had transformed from a playground to a nightmare, and their only hope was to stay together and pray for rescue. But the current was relentless. It pulled them apart, inch by inch, and soon, John realized he was losing sight of Emily and Sarah. He called out to them, his voice strained and desperate, but the roar of the waves swallowed his words. He clung to Lucas, his arms tight around his son, feeling the weight of helplessness as the ocean carried his wife and daughter farther away. Time felt suspended in those moments, each second stretching into eternity. John held Lucas close, whispering words of comfort he didn't fully believe, his own heart breaking with every minute that passed without sight of Emily and Sarah. He tried to stay strong for his son, but the cold, unforgiving sea had already claimed so much. Eventually, a rescue team arrived, alerted by their earlier distress call. They pulled John and Lucas from the water, wrapping them in blankets and tending to their shock and exhaustion. But as they scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of Emily and Sarah, the harsh reality settled in. They were gone. The rescue team searched tirelessly, but it was too late. The ocean had taken them. If you thought that was intense, wait until you hear about the fishermen who faced a relentless battle with these powerful predators. It was a typical morning for Miguel and his crew aboard the Sea Rover, a well-worn fishing vessel that had seen years of rough seas and prosperous catches. The fishermen were no strangers to the ocean's unpredictable moods, navigating the vast waters off the coast of Spain with skill and respect. That morning, the sea was calm and the crew was hopeful. The fish were plentiful, and they had already started hauling in a promising catch. As they worked, Miguel spotted a shadow gliding beneath the surface, and a familiar black fin broke the water nearby. The sight of orcas was always a rare thrill, a reminder of the untamed beauty of the ocean. The rest of the crew paused to watch, their eyes fixed on the majestic animals that had come alongside their boat. They admired the orca's grace as they swam near the vessel, circling with ease. Some of the younger crew members even leaned over the railing, pointing and whispering in awe. For a moment, the fishermen were entranced, forgetting about their nets and lines in the presence of the ocean's top predators. But admiration quickly turned to concern when the largest orca veered closer, circling back toward the boat with a new intensity in its movements. The orca's sleek, dark form cut through the water with purpose, and Miguel noticed that its gaze seemed fixed on the vessel. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, ramming the side of the boat with a force that sent a shudder through the hull. The men staggered, bracing themselves against the unexpected jolt. Another impact followed, this time even stronger. The fisherman's excitement was gone, replaced by a growing sense of unease. He knew these waters well, but he had never seen orcas behave like this. The orcas had shifted from curiosity to aggression, and their movements were coordinated. They struck the boat again, causing it to rock violently, and Miguel realized they weren't dealing with a passing encounter. The orcas were targeting them, their powerful bodies colliding with the vessel in calculated blows. The crew scrambled to respond, grabbing whatever they could to ward off the attackers. One of the men picked up a metal pole, banging it against the hull in a desperate attempt to create noise that might scare the orcas away. Another lit a flare, hoping the sudden light would send the animals retreating. But the orcas seemed unfazed, undeterred by the noise or the flashes of light. They continued their assault, circling back to strike the boat with unwavering determination. Miguel's heart pounded as he directed his crew, his mind racing for solutions. The boat was sturdy, but it wasn't built to withstand repeated blows from animals of such size and power. Each impact felt more threatening, more final. He tried to keep his men calm, but the fear was evident in their eyes. They were fishermen, used to battling the elements, not creatures that seemed bent on sinking them. The attacks grew more intense, each strike pushing the boat closer to its limits. Miguel could feel the vessel groaning under the strain, the wooden planks creaking as water began to seep in. One of the younger crew members, Carlos, lost his footing as the boat pitched sideways, his hands scrambling for a grip. Miguel grabbed his arm, pulling him up just as another orca rammed the stern, causing the boat to spin. Their nets, once filled with fish, now floated haphazardly around the deck, a mess of gear and tangled lines that only added to the chaos. In a last-ditch effort, Miguel shouted for everyone to grab whatever could be thrown. They hurled equipment, empty crates, even chunks of ice from the storage hold, anything that might create a barrier or a distraction. But the orcas seemed almost toying with them, dodging the debris with ease and returning to batter the vessel's weak points. One of the orcas took a large piece of wood from the rudder in its mouth, shaking it as if to show its dominance. The sight sent a chill through Miguel. These animals weren't just attacking. They seemed to know exactly where to strike to cripple the boat. As water began flooding the lower deck, Miguel knew they couldn't hold out much longer. He signaled one of his crew to send a distress call, praying that help would arrive before it was too late. But every second felt like an hour as the orcas continued their relentless assault, their dark shapes moving with a precision that defied understanding. One orca slammed into the side again, and the boat tilted dangerously, half submerged in the cold Atlantic waters. Finally, the sound of an approaching rescue vessel broke through the chaos. A sliver of hope pierced the fishermen's panic as the rescue crew threw out lines and began pulling them aboard, one by one. But even as they scrambled to safety, they couldn't help but look back at their boat, now battered and nearly submerged. The Sea Rover, their livelihood, was sinking, and with it, a part of their spirit. As the last fisherman was pulled onto the rescue boat, the orcas backed off, their presence still looming beneath the waves as if observing the scene. Miguel watched with a heavy heart as the Sea Rover disappeared beneath the water, leaving only ripples and scattered debris behind. The orcas had won this battle, and their strength and intelligence were undeniable. It started as a calm, sunlit day on the water, with just the gentle waves and the hum of a boat's engine, until a massive shadow appeared just below the surface. Suddenly, the ship lurched as an orca rammed its head into the side with a calculated, forceful strike. What began as a peaceful journey for the crew on board quickly turned into a nightmare that no one could have imagined. Let's dive into the horrific orca attacks that shocked the world. Orcas, or killer whales, are among the ocean's most intelligent and powerful predators. Known for their sharp minds and physical prowess, These apex predators are capable of highly coordinated behaviors and even problem-solving. In the wild, orcas have been observed hunting in packs, using complex strategies to capture prey. Recently, however, orcas have been exhibiting a new and increasingly aggressive behavior, targeting boats, particularly near the Strait of Gibraltar. In several recorded incidents, pods have been seen ramming boats, damaging rudders, and circling vessels for prolonged periods. The exact reasons for this shift remain unclear, but researchers suspect that stress, social learning, or even trauma may play a role. On August 2024, the sailboat Amidala was sailing off the coast of northwestern Spain, where serene waters and a clear sky had set the stage for what was supposed to be a peaceful day at sea. The crew aboard the Amidala, a mix of experienced sailors and enthusiastic travelers, enjoyed the calmness of the open water, blissfully unaware of the impending danger beneath them. With the soft lapping of the waves against the hull, no one could have anticipated the sudden, aggressive encounter that would soon unfold. As the boat glided through the sea, the peace was abruptly shattered by a violent jolt. The vessel shook unexpectedly, and crew members were momentarily thrown off balance, exchanging confused glances as they scrambled to regain their footing. At first, some thought they might have struck a floating log or debris. However, as the boat continued to shudder with each successive impact, the crew's unease grew. Leaning over the side, they soon saw several dark, imposing shapes beneath the water, circling with alarming intent, the unmistakable silhouettes of orcas. But these orcas weren't merely passing by. Instead, they were strategically targeting the Amidala, ramming the boat's rudder with relentless force. Each strike came with a powerful impact, and the crew watched in shock as the orcas coordinated their assault, repeatedly slamming into the boat's most vulnerable part. The sound of each collision echoed ominously across the deck as if the vessel itself were groaning under the pressure. The captain, aware that the rudder's integrity was crucial for steering, immediately directed the crew to stabilize and secure their equipment. He attempted to adjust course to evade the aggressive animals, but the rudder, having sustained multiple hits, was increasingly difficult to maneuver. Panic began to ripple through the crew as they realized the orcas weren't simply curious. They were exhibiting targeted aggression, displaying a level of coordination that caught everyone off guard. One of the crew members, a Belgian sailor, tried to help secure equipment that had been dislodged during the attack. As he moved toward the aft of the boat, a particularly powerful impact struck the vessel, sending a jolt through the entire structure. The Belgian crew member lost his footing and was thrown against the rigging, his hand getting caught and twisted in the ropes. A sharp cry rang out as pain surged through his arm, and blood started dripping onto the deck. Realizing the severity of his injury, nearby crew members rushed to his aid, attempting to free his hand from the rigging while trying to maintain their balance on the unsteady deck. Despite the efforts to free him, his injury was severe. His hand was visibly damaged, with deep lacerations and potential fractures from the impact. In the confusion and urgency of the situation, the crew knew they had to act fast. One of the sailors reached for the boat's emergency radio to contact the Spanish Coast Guard, urgently explaining their position, the escalating situation, and the need for immediate medical assistance for their injured crewmate. The captain issued a distress call, and within minutes, the Coast Guard confirmed a rescue operation was en route. However, given the crew member's worsening condition and the intensity of the ongoing Orca attack, there was concern over whether they could stabilize him until help arrived. Meanwhile, the Orcas continued their aggressive behavior, showing no signs of letting up. Each strike seemed calculated, as if the Orcas were driven by a determination to disable the vessel completely. The crew observed the Orcas' seemingly coordinated movements as they took turns ramming the rudder with precision. One Orca in particular, larger than the others, appeared to lead the charge, diving beneath the boat and re-emerging on the other side to deliver another impact from a new angle. The repeated targeting of the rudder raised unsettling questions for the crew. Had these Orcas somehow learned to recognize and exploit the boat's weak points? This wasn't the first reported instance of Orcas exhibiting such aggressive behaviors in this region, but the crew couldn't believe the intensity of the encounter. Some members, even seasoned sailors, had never witnessed anything like this, noting the apparent strategic intent behind the attack. The Orcas' behavior went beyond curiosity or playfulness. It seemed calculated, almost as if they had developed a collective tactic for disrupting the boat's movement. The crew, already on edge, couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness in the face of such formidable animals. As the captain tried to steady the Amidala, news came over the radio that an air evacuation was being prepared for the injured crew member due to the severity of his injury. The plan was to airlift him to a hospital as soon as the boat was within reach of the coast. It was now a race against time, not only to get to safety but to preserve the injured sailor's hand, which was bleeding heavily and showing signs of severe trauma. Once the Coast Guard's rescue team arrived, they assessed the situation and worked quickly to secure the Amidala and arrange for the airlift of the injured sailor. The crew was visibly shaken, and the captain recounted the experience to the rescue team, emphasizing the targeted and aggressive nature of the attack. Meanwhile, the Orcas had finally dispersed, as if satisfied with the damage they had inflicted. The battered Amidala, its rudder nearly destroyed, was then towed by the Coast Guard toward a nearby port. On a routine afternoon in February 2010, Dawn Branchot, an experienced trainer at SeaWorld Orlando, was preparing for the Dean with Shamu show with Tilikum, a 12,000-pound orca. Branchot, known for her dedication to marine animals and passion for her job, was a seasoned professional with 16 years of experience. Her expertise and connection with Tilikum, a massive male orca with a troubled history, made her a trusted figure at SeaWorld. For the audience seated around the pool, it was a typical show day, with excited onlookers eager to see the impressive display of orca intelligence and power. However, that day would take a tragic turn, forever altering the public's perception of orca captivity. Tilikum was a particularly special orca in SeaWorld's lineup, known for his size and past incidents. Captured off the coast of Iceland in 1983, Tilikum had spent his early years in captivity at Sealand of the Pacific before being moved to SeaWorld. During his years at Sealand, Tilikum was involved in 2 fatalities, raising concerns about his behavior. Despite these concerns, Tilikum was brought to SeaWorld in 1992, where he continued to be a featured part of orca shows due to his remarkable size and appearance. On that fateful day, Branchot was interacting with Tilikum at the edge of the pool, using hand signals and rewards as part of a training exercise. With a calm demeanor and years of trust built with her animal charges, Branchot had no reason to believe that the day would end any differently from her other interactions with orcas. The audience watched, captivated, as the trainer skillfully guided the massive creature through the routine. Yet, within moments, the atmosphere shifted from one of awe to one of horror. In a sudden and unexpected move, Tilikum grabbed Branchot, reportedly by her ponytail, and pulled her into the water. What had been a controlled display of human-animal interaction quickly became a life-or-death struggle as Tilikum dragged Branchot to the depths of the pool. Audience members gasped and screamed as they watched the orca thrash in the water, holding Branchot under with his immense weight and power. Other trainers rushed to the scene, throwing safety nets and attempting to use distraction techniques to separate the orca from Branchot, but their efforts proved futile. For nearly 45 minutes, Tilikum refused to release Branchot, repeatedly submerging her and preventing any chance of escape or intervention. By the time SeaWorld staff managed to retrieve Branchot's body, she had sustained extensive injuries, including a dislocated arm, multiple fractures, and fatal drowning. The tragedy left spectators and staff in shock and led to an immediate shutdown of SeaWorld's orca shows as authorities investigated what had gone so catastrophically wrong. The attack on Dawn Branchot was particularly shocking, not only because of the brutality, but also because it unfolded before a live audience. Many questioned why such a dangerous animal was being showcased in close contact with trainers, especially given Tilikum's history. The incident forced the public to confront difficult questions about orca captivity and whether such intelligent, powerful animals belonged in confined environments for entertainment purposes. In the wake of Branchot's death, SeaWorld faced significant backlash from the public, media, and regulatory bodies. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation, which concluded that SeaWorld had willfully exposed its employees to recognized hazards. OSHA cited SeaWorld for safety violations, including the failure to provide adequate physical barriers between trainers and orcas, and imposed a $75,000 fine. The report emphasized that Tilikum's size, strength, and history of aggressive behavior made close contact inherently dangerous and required stricter safety measures. Broncho's death marked a turning point in how marine parks operated and presented orca shows. In response to the incident, SeaWorld announced changes to its training protocols, emphasizing increased safety measures for trainers and restrictions on direct physical interaction with orcas. The Dine with Shamu program and similar close contact shows were discontinued, and barriers were introduced between trainers and orcas during performances. These changes were intended to protect both trainers and orcas, yet many argued that they did not go far enough in addressing the core issue of orca captivity. Public sentiment began to shift significantly after Broncho's death, with animal rights activists calling for the release of captive orcas and the end of marine mammal shows. The release of the documentary Blackfish in 2013 intensified the scrutiny of SeaWorld and the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. The documentary detailed the psychological and physical effects of confinement on orcas, drawing particular attention to Tilikum's life and the conditions that may have contributed to his aggressive behavior. Blackfish was a wake-up call for many, leading to widespread protests, boycotts, and a decline in attendance at SeaWorld parks. The impact of Broncho's death extended beyond SeaWorld, influencing legislation and public policy related to captive marine animals. In 2016, California passed the Orca Protection and Safety Act, which banned the breeding of orcas and restricted their use in entertainment performances within the state. SeaWorld announced shortly afterward that it would end its orca breeding program and transition its focus to educational presentations rather than theatrical shows. These changes were seen as a response to mounting public pressure and a recognition of the ethical concerns surrounding orca captivity. On June 2023, boat captain Dan Kriz found himself at the center of a tense and dangerous encounter in the Strait of Gibraltar, a region that has become increasingly known for unusual orca behavior in recent years. Kriz, an experienced sailor with countless hours spent navigating the waters between Europe and Africa, never anticipated that his journey would involve a close call with one of the ocean's top predators. However, the growing trend of orca aggression in this area, particularly their calculated attacks on vessels, has been a cause for concern among sailors, researchers, and authorities alike. Kriz was in the process of delivering a yacht through the strait when he first encountered the orcas. Known for their high intelligence and social behaviors, these orcas had developed a reputation for ambushing boats, specifically targeting rudders. The first incident occurred on a bright, calm morning, with nothing to suggest that danger was nearby. Suddenly, Kriz felt an abrupt jolt as the yacht shook, sending a chill of adrenaline through his body. He quickly realized he was under attack by a group of orcas, each one weighing thousands of pounds and capable of immense power. The orca's primary target was clear. They honed in on the yacht's rudder, ramming it with deliberate force. Unlike typical encounters with marine life, this was no accident or playful interaction. The orcas were systematically and repeatedly attacking a critical part of the vessel, aiming to immobilize it. Each hit made the rudder increasingly difficult to control, and Kriz was left trying to manage the yacht's movements while avoiding further damage. The sound of the orcas' bodies colliding with the yacht reverberated through the hull, a reminder of the sheer power of these animals and the peril of the situation. Though Kriz was familiar with the waters and the region's wildlife, this level of aggression was unlike anything he had experienced. He tried several techniques to deter the orcas, including steering into the wind and attempting to create noise in hopes of scaring them off. However, the orcas were undeterred, focused on the task at hand with an eerie persistence. As the attack continued, Kriz felt his options narrowing. He was forced to accept that his best hope was to remain as calm as possible, keep control of the yacht, and wait out the assault. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only minutes, the orcas finally relented, allowing Kriz to regain control of the yacht. Although rattled by the experience, he quickly checked the rudder and surrounding areas of the vessel for damage, preparing to continue his delivery route. However, the incident left him on edge, as he knew the threat of a repeat encounter was real. Chris's unease proved to be justified. Just a few days later, while still navigating the Strait of Gibraltar, his vessel was ambushed once again. This time, he had barely begun to relax when the boat was struck with sudden, brutal force, much like before. Once again, the Orcas focused on the yacht's rudder, displaying the same targeted aggression that had caught him off guard in the initial attack. This second encounter confirmed for Chris what other sailors in the region had been reporting for months. The Orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar were becoming more aggressive, and their attacks were highly calculated. The calculated nature of these Orca attacks has puzzled scientists and marine experts. While Orcas are known to be highly intelligent and social creatures, their motivation for targeting boats, specifically the rudders, remains unclear. Some researchers suggest that these behaviors could be a form of social learning, where Orcas observe and mimic one another's actions, leading to a cultural shift in their interaction with boats. Others speculate that the attacks could be in response to past trauma or disturbances in their environment, such as noise pollution or territorial encroachment, which may have conditioned the Orcas to view boats as threats. As the trend of Orca aggression continues in the Strait of Gibraltar, authorities have been exploring solutions to protect both the Orcas and human vessels. Some strategies include rerouting boat traffic and encouraging sailors to take preventive measures, such as reducing speed or avoiding certain areas where Orca attacks are more common. Marine experts have also called for more research into Orca behavior and possible triggers that might be influencing their actions in this region. Despite the growing number of incidents, sailors are often left with few options when faced with an Orca attack. As Dan Chris learned, the best course of action is often to remain calm, avoid sudden movements, and avoid attempting to engage with the Orcas. Yet, for sailors navigating these waters, each encounter brings its own set of challenges and risks. Chris himself described the experience as a chilling reminder of the power and unpredictability of Orcas, acknowledging that his survival depended largely on the Orcas' decision to eventually disengage. The repeated ambushes faced by Chris have added to the mounting reports of Orca aggression in the Strait of Gibraltar. In many of these cases, boats are left significantly damaged, with repairs often needed to fix destroyed rudders and compromised hulls. However, injuries to humans have been relatively rare, as the Orcas appear to focus primarily on the boats rather than their occupants. This distinction has led to speculation that the Orcas' behavior may be more about asserting dominance or marking territory, rather than an outright threat to human life. The ocean can seem calm and predictable until it's not. On a quite sunny day, an Orca, the ocean's apex predator, unexpectedly charges a boat, ramming its rudder and leaving the crew stranded. In marine parks, the danger is no less real, as even well-trained Orcas turn on their handlers in terrifying displays of power. These moments serve as chilling reminders of the untamed strength and intelligence of these majestic creatures, and the risks humans take when interacting with them. Emily Cadeau grew up mesmerized by the majesty of Orcas. Her childhood fascination with these oceanic predators was born from family trips to Blue Water's Marine Park. Every summer, Emily would watch in awe as trainers interacted with the Orcas, performing intricate routines that demonstrated trust and understanding between humans and animals. By the time she was 10, her bedroom walls were adorned with posters of Orcas leaping into the air, each image a testament to her dream. One day, she would work alongside these magnificent creatures. Years later, at 28, Emily's dream had become reality. With nearly a decade of experience, she was now one of the most skilled trainers at Blue Water's Marine Park. Her relationship with Nar, the park's star Orca, was the envy of her colleagues. Together, they performed breathtaking routines that left audiences in awe. Emily's friends often joked that she spent more time at the park than at home, a sentiment not far from the truth. For Emily, Blue Waters wasn't just a workplace, it was her sanctuary. But even the strongest bonds have their limits. In the weeks leading up to the incident, Emily began to notice subtle changes in Nar's behavior. The usually energetic Orca seemed restless and distant. While others dismissed her concerns as overthinking, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her unease grew, but she hoped the show would go smoothly, as it always had. The fateful day began like any other. The sun shone brightly over Blue Waters Marine Park as visitors poured into the amphitheater, eager to watch the orca performance. Emily stood by the tank, her wetsuit gleaming in the sunlight as she prepared for the show. Nar glided through the water, her massive dorsal fin cutting gracefully through the surface. Despite the crowd's excitement, Emily couldn't ignore the nervous energy building in her chest. Nar's movements were sharper and more erratic than usual, but there was no time to dwell on her fears. The show had to go on. As the performance began, Nar executed her opening routines flawlessly. She leaped into the air, her powerful body creating a cascade of water that drenched the delighted audience. The crowd erupted in cheers, and for a brief moment, Emily felt a flicker of relief. Perhaps she had been worrying for nothing. But as the show progressed, her unease returned. Nar's movements grew faster, her circles tighter, and her eyes seemed to hold a glint of something unrecognizable, something wild. Finally, it was time for the finale, a signature move that never failed to captivate the audience. Emily dove into the tank, her body slicing through the cool water as the audience's cheers reached a crescendo. She signaled for Nar to join her, and the orca responded, her massive shadow passing beneath Emily. The trainer extended a hand, motioning for Nar to back up slightly, but the orca didn't obey. Instead, she surged forward, her powerful jaws clamping down on Emily's leg with terrifying force. The water erupted into chaos. Nar dragged Emily downward. Her immense strength is overwhelming the trainer's desperate attempts to break free. Panic surged through Emily's body as she felt the icy sting of pain shoot through her leg. Blood clouded the water, turning it a murky red. Above the surface, the crowd's cheers turned to gasps, then horrified screams, as the reality of the situation dawned on them. Emily's parents, seated in the front row, watched in helpless terror as their daughter struggled against the orca's unrelenting grip. Trainers on the edge of the tank sprang into action. They shouted commands, threw ropes, and tried to distract Nar with fish, but nothing worked. The orca's thrashing only intensified, pulling Emily deeper into the tank. Her movements grew weaker as her strength waned. In a final, desperate effort, she reached for the surface, her hand breaking through the water for a fleeting moment before Nar dragged her back under. For the crowd, the spectacle was a horrifying reminder of the raw power these creatures possess. The water grew still, darkened by blood, as Nar's thrashing ceased. When the orca finally released Emily, her lifeless body floated slowly to the surface. Rescue divers reached her within seconds, pulling her from the tank, but it was already too late. The park fell silent, the joyous atmosphere replaced by a blanket of shock and grief. In the days that followed, Blue Waters Marine Park suspended all orca performances. The gates eventually closed for good, the tragedy marking the end of an era. Emily's family held a quiet memorial by the ocean, where her love for marine life had first taken root. Friends and colleagues shared stories of her passion and dedication, their voices tinged with sorrow. For those who had witnessed the event, it was a haunting reminder of the unpredictable nature of these majestic animals. Nar's actions, while tragic, were not entirely surprising to marine experts. Orcas, or killer whales, are apex predators with unmatched intelligence and strength. In the wild, they navigate vast oceanic territories, hunting seals, fish, and even other whales with precision and cunning. Captivity, however, strips them of their natural behaviors, confining them to small tanks that fail to replicate the complexity of their natural environment. Experts believe that this confinement can lead to stress, frustration, and unpredictable aggression. It was a warm, sunny day at SeaWorld Orlando, where hundreds of visitors had gathered to enjoy the park's iconic orca shows. For the trainers, it was just another day of rehearsals and routines with the park's resident killer whales. These highly trained individuals spent countless hours developing trust and rapport with the orcas, preparing for awe-inspiring performances that wowed the crowds. However, what began as a routine interaction on June 13, 2022, quickly turned into a life-altering moment for one trainer. During a routine session with one of the park's orcas, a female trainer found herself in a terrifying situation. As part of the session, the trainer extended her arm to signal a behavior. Without warning, the orca surged forward and clamped its powerful jaws around her arm. The bite was swift but devastating, breaking several bones in the trainer's forearm. Witnesses described a mix of gasps and shouts as onlookers realized the severity of what had just occurred. The trainer, though in immense pain, maintained remarkable composure, using her experience and instincts to de-escalate the situation. The orca released her arm after what felt like an eternity, and emergency protocols were immediately activated. Fellow trainers rushed to her side, guiding her out of the water and stabilizing her until paramedics arrived. The trainer was quickly transported to a nearby hospital, where doctors confirmed multiple fractures and severe tissue damage. She would later require extensive surgery and months of rehabilitation to regain functionality in her arm. The incident sent shockwaves through SeaWorld Orlando and the wider marine park community. While orca-related injuries are rare, they are not unprecedented. These animals, though trained and accustomed to human interaction, remain wild at heart. Their immense size, averaging 20 to 26 feet in length and weighing up to 12,000 pounds, combined with their unpredictable behavior, makes working with them inherently risky. Trainers are well aware of these risks, yet such incidents highlight the ever-present danger of working with apex predators. As news of the incident spread, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation to determine whether any safety violations had occurred. OSHA had scrutinized SeaWorld in the past, particularly after the high-profile case involving Dawn Brancheau in 2010. However, this investigation concluded that there was no evidence of negligence or failure to adhere to safety protocols during the June 2022 incident. The findings absolved SeaWorld of any direct responsibility, but the incident reignited debates about the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. Animal rights advocates were quick to point out the psychological toll captivity takes on orcas. In the wild, these animals swim up to 100 miles a day, engaging in complex social behaviors and hunting in pods. In captivity, however, they are confined to relatively small tanks and subjected to rigorous training schedules. Critics argue that these conditions can lead to frustration, stress, and even aggression. The incident at SeaWorld Orlando became another example for those who believe captivity is incompatible with the welfare of such intelligent and powerful creatures. SeaWorld, for its part, emphasized its commitment to trainer safety and orca welfare. In a statement, the park highlighted the extensive training its staff undergoes, including emergency protocols for high-risk situations. SeaWorld also reiterated its adherence to federal and state regulations governing marine parks and animal welfare. Despite these reassurances, the incident added fuel to the ongoing debate over the future of orca captivity. For the injured trainer, the road to recovery was long and arduous. Physical therapy sessions became a daily routine, and the emotional scars of the incident were just as challenging to heal. However, her dedication to the animals never wavered. In interviews conducted months later, she expressed a deep understanding of the risks involved and a continued passion for working with orcas. Her story became a testament to the courage and resilience of trainers who dedicate their lives to working with these majestic yet unpredictable creatures. Beyond the personal story, the incident reignited discussions within the marine park industry about balancing human safety with animal welfare. Some experts advocated for the continuation of orca performances, arguing that they provide valuable opportunities for public education and marine conservation awareness. Others called for the complete cessation of such shows, suggesting that orcas should instead be placed in sea sanctuaries where they can live in more natural conditions while still receiving care. The trainer's injury also led to renewed scrutiny of the effectiveness of current safety measures. While SeaWorld had implemented significant changes following previous incidents, including the introduction of barriers between trainers and orcas during performances, some questioned whether more could be done. Suggestions included enhanced training for emergency scenarios, improved monitoring of orca behavior, and exploring alternative ways to engage with these animals that don't involve direct physical contact. Meanwhile, the incident became a rallying point for animal advocacy organizations. Groups like PETA and the Humane Society used the story to amplify their campaigns against marine mammal captivity. Public sentiment continued to shift, with more people questioning the ethics of keeping orcas in tanks for entertainment. Documentaries like Blackfish had already brought these issues to the forefront, and incidents like the one in June 2022 further eroded public support for traditional marine park practices. In the summer of 2024, the tranquil seas off the coast of Portugal became the setting for a harrowing ordeal when the Norwegian yacht Helgeson found itself at the mercy of a pod of orcas. What began as a routine voyage for the seasoned crew turned into a nightmare that would end with their vessel lost beneath the waves. The Helgeson, a 40-foot yacht, was en route from Lisbon to Gibraltar, navigating waters known for their beauty and recently for a concerning rise in orca activity. The day was calm, with clear skies and gentle waves, as the crew of 4 enjoyed their journey. They were experienced sailors, aware of the risks in the Strait of Gibraltar and the Atlantic approaches, but nothing could have prepared them for what unfolded. It started with faint splashes in the distance, at first a curiosity, then a concern, as a pod of orcas began closing in on the yacht. Orcas, often referred to as wolves of the sea, are apex predators, renowned for their intelligence and complex social structures. In recent years, this area has seen an uptick in aggressive orca encounters, with the animals targeting the rudders of boats, seemingly in coordinated efforts to disable them. The Helgeson was about to become their latest target. The crew quickly realized the orcas weren't just passing by. Within minutes, the pod surrounded the yacht, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with precision. Then came the first impact, a sudden, jarring blow to the stern as one of the orcas rammed the yacht's rudder. The impact reverberated through the vessel, startling the crew and causing one of them to lose their balance. Before they could react, a second and third strike followed in quick succession, each hit more forceful than the last. Panic set in as the crew scrambled to assess the damage. The yacht's rudder was their primary means of steering, and with each attack, it became increasingly compromised. One crew member peered over the stern, only to witness the orcas systematically targeting the vulnerable rudder with their powerful jaws and ramming it with their massive bodies. It was clear this was no random encounter. The pod was working together with calculated intent. Despite the crew's best efforts to evade the attackers, the yacht's steering became unresponsive, and water began seeping into the hull through the compromised stern. The situation was dire. They sent out a distress signal, hoping for a swift response from nearby vessels or maritime authorities. Meanwhile, they enacted emergency protocols, donning life jackets and preparing the life raft as the orcas continued their relentless assault. The final blow came when one particularly forceful strike caused the rudder to break away completely, leaving the Helgeson adrift and vulnerable. Water poured into the yacht faster than the crew could manage, and it became evident that the vessel was sinking. The crew worked quickly to deploy the life raft, gathering essential supplies and abandoning ship just as the Helgeson began to tip precariously to one side. The pod lingered as the yacht sank, their dorsal fins slicing through the water ominously close to the life raft. The crew huddled together, watching helplessly as their vessel disappeared beneath the waves. Though terrified, they remained composed, knowing rescue was on the way. Within an hour, a nearby cargo ship responded to their distress signal and arrived to pull them to safety. The loss of the Helgeson added to a growing list of incidents involving orcas in the region. Maritime experts and researchers had been closely monitoring this behavioral trend, which seemed to be escalating in both frequency and intensity. Speculations about the reasons behind these attacks ranged from territoriality to stress or learned behavior within specific pods. The orcas targeting the Helgeson appeared to belong to a group already notorious for similar encounters, leading to increased concerns among sailors. For the crew of the Helgeson, the experience was a sobering reminder of the power and unpredictability of nature. Though they escaped unharmed, the emotional toll of the encounter was significant. The captain later described the event to maritime authorities, highlighting the calculated and coordinated nature of the orcas' actions during the attack. Their behavior demonstrated a level of strategy and determination that left the crew feeling powerless in the face of such an overwhelming force. In response to this and other incidents, maritime organizations have ramped up efforts to mitigate the risks posed by orca encounters. New guidelines advise sailors to shut off engines, avoid sudden movements, and refrain from engaging with the animals. Acoustic deterrents and non-lethal methods to redirect orcas have also been tested, though their effectiveness remains inconsistent. The sinking of the Helgeson reignited discussions about human activity in marine ecosystems and its potential impact on orca behavior. Some researchers argue that increased boat traffic and environmental changes could be contributing to the aggression observed in these pods. Others suggest that specific groups of orcas may be teaching these behaviors to younger generations, further complicating efforts to address the issue. If you enjoyed this video, watch our next one shown on screen.